Okay, right. So now we've just finished talking about errors that the trial balance will find, right? And we will have a suspense account that just naturally comes out of the trial balance because the suspense account is used to plug that difference between the debits and the credits. Just going back to that a little, you might get a question that tells you, oh, the suspense account has a debit balance. Just put it on the debit side. I mean, that's what it is. You might get a question that does something like this. It'll tell you, oh, I don't know, the debit side was 900 and the credit side of the trial balance was 1,000. Well, it means the suspense account must definitely, to balance this whole thing, must be 100, right? Because that's the only way this thing is going to balance. So you know you're starting off with 100 on that. It could have been, the key point is you just have to look at the question and then go with that. Okay, now we're looking at errors that the trial balance just won't find. And that's very possible. I mean, imagine you just never put through the invoice in the first place. If the invoice came in, remember the invoice goes into an invoice, for example, a purchase invoice will go into the purchase day book. That's a source document, right? And imagine it just never went in. Well, if it never went in, well, it just never went in. It's not even going to go through the double entry system. And so your trial balance will balance with everything else, but the accounts are still not right. So the gateway won't even pick it up. So we have a couple of those type of errors, and there's 6 of them. You need to know them, 6 of them, right? So we have the error of omission, which is what I've just talked about. So I'm on page 320. It just don't pick it up. You just entirely forgot to put through the error. The invoice. You just didn't know. You just never put it through. Completely forgot. So the debit and the credits are not there. Then we have what we call the error of, let's just say, original entry. So for example, you put in your purchase day book, I'll just use the purchase day book for all of this. In your purchase day book, there was an invoice for 2,000, but you put in 200. Remember, all you'd have done was, imagine this should have been for 2,000, you put in 200. We have B, we have C. Say we have two other invoices, and this is what you have. Remember, you now have 1,000. Remember, the double entry starts with this. We go to my general ledger. In my general ledger, I have purchases, and I have purchase ledger control account. All I'll do is this, right? 1,000, 1,000. And I wouldn't pick it up. So even here, the double entry is fine, but there's an error here. This should not be 200. This should be 2,000. So we have an error of original entry. I've put the wrong thing in. And so now technically, when I go to my purchase ledger, I should see, right, the fact that I owe someone £2,000. And hopefully when we do a rec, you might pick up that type of error. So you can sort of see the thinking behind this as far as the double entry is concerned, because this is the double entry. Right. So you have an error of original entry. Another interesting error here, since I'm here, is, for example, sometimes you get questions that say, oh, this total thing here was overcast. So the total of the purchase day book was overcast. So this, instead of writing 1,000 or undercast, maybe I wrote 700. I don't know, some crazy thing came upon me. And instead of I added all this wrong, and I put 700 here. So instead of putting 1,000 and 1,000 here, I've gone along and I put 700 and 700. Well, I mean, the debits and the credits will go through the gateway, the TB gateway, because the debits and credits equal to each other, but the accounts are wrong. So how do I fix this? Well, I just need to top up both sides, right, by 300, and then back to normal. So these are errors that the trial balance just will not find. So these are errors of original entry, what I'm just talking about. So we've done error of omission, error of original entry. So let's stick with that purchases and purchase ledger control account. So let's say I did my day book and I had 1,000 at the bottom, right? And all I had to do was put 1,000 here and 1,000 here, right? That's what I'm supposed to do. Right, let me just change that. And say for some strange reason you go ahead and you do this. You put 1,000 here and you put 1,000 here. Well, the truth is the gateway won't pick it up. All the debits are equal to the credits, but this is on the opposite side. So we call this error of reversal of entries. So debits are still equal to the credits, but this is not, if you like. The trial balance won't pick this up. Right, so really this is wrong. So what we would do is literally 1,000 there, 1,000 there. That clears it out first, and then put the right thing in. 1,000 there and 1,000 there, and we're now back on track, right? Okay, I mean, you should never do what I just did here. I was just explaining that's the 1,000 there. You should always see what it is you're dealing with. Okay, so that's 3 errors done. Error of omission, error of original entry, and error of reversal of entry. Now, say for example, let's do another little one. Say for example, you have purchases. I'll stick with the purchases one. And you have here, of course, pay purchase ledger control account. And instead of putting the one, so you do this right, 1,000. Instead of you putting the in 1,000, you put it in wages, or electricity, or water. So you put it here. Well, the debits is still equal to the credits, but they're in the wrong account. So we call this an error of mispost, or an error of commission. The reason we call it an error of commission is because, well, you've committed a sin. It's not a big sin. The profit is still not affected. They're all E's. So overall, we'll still be able to find out what profit is. And profit will remain the same whether I put it here or here. They're all E's. So we call this an error of commission. When you stay within the same category so if it was all A's or all E's, if the movement was within the same letters, well then, and where profit is not affected, we call it an error of commission. Now, if you instead of putting it in purchases, imagine you put it in non-current asset. You put it here. Well, now profit will be affected, right? Because there's no expense. This is an asset. So we call this an error of principle. You've broken a rule, an error of principle. Right. So the final error that I'm going to talk about is what we call an error of compensation. So let's just do this again. So say, for example, this was your bank. And you had a purchase ledger control account. So, for example, let's just have rent and purchases. So purchases, like we have 1,000, and bank, say for example, for rent was maybe 2,000. And for some crazy reason, I don't know, you put here 1,500. And for an equally crazy reason, you put here 1,500. Well, these two are equal to 3,000. These are correct. Both of these are wrong. So we have two errors compensating for each other. So you can see that the debits are still equal to the credits, but overall the accounts are wrong. So we need to fix this, don't we? We need to fix this. Right, so technically what I need to do is pretty much do that. 500 there and 500 there. And that kind of fixes that, right? Because that's now 2,000 and that's now 1,000. Right? And those are our errors. So 6 errors. Yes, make sure you remember them. Watch the video. You need to be happy with them. So you need to read the question and just sort of see where they're going and try and see through. Usually with the first errors I did in the first video, they usually tell you that, oh, one side's been left out. But with this, both sides have been put through, but we just have the 6 errors I just described. Okay, great stuff. And that's it for errors. And I will see. And again, the key point again, find the problem and fix the problem. And don't worry about the suspense account. Whatever like in the other video, when you fix the problem, the other thing should go to the suspense account if there's just the one side where there's the issue. Okay, great stuff. Again, watch the full video, do the questions in the book, and I will see you in the final chapter.